All righty, good afternoon, everyone. Meteorologist Michael Wilhite here. Got a lot to cover in a short amount of time here. There's a severe weather threat. Small one, but it's there over the next 3 days. Let's jump right into it. First off, we are looking at the Storm Prediction Center's outlook for today. Notice that they have extended that marginal risk into our area. That's something that they have not had in previous outlooks. Yesterday identified roughly this area as probably needing a little bit of a low-end risk for severe weather on Friday evening, and they hadn't outlined anything yet. They've now outlined that area for Friday evening as well, and a little bit for Saturday. All marginal risks. I do think that we could see an upgrade to a slight risk on Friday evening based on some of the data. We'll cover that here in a minute. But overall, I think a marginal risk is pretty good for us. These are not massive severe weather threats. They're pretty low end, but nonetheless, they're there. Let's get right into the data. Let's take a look at future radar. Let me back this up in time here. And we are looking at the HRRR model here. As you go into the afternoon hours, this is today, so timestamps right up in the corner, 3 p.m. Central Time. You got some storms starting to fire over Illinois here, and then move down into southwest Indiana and eventually into Kentucky. And not a tremendous amount of storms, but nonetheless, some potential storms there. As you go in time, towards the evening, we'll get a break, and then during the overnight hours, you've got the remnants, a blow-off, if you will, of storms out to our west moving in. Now, excuse me, fighting a summer cold here. All right, back this up in time, and let's run to the RRFS model. It's a little bit more bullish. You notice that by the time you hit 2 o'clock in the afternoon here, you're starting to see some of these already moving in. Here's 3, here's 4 o'clock if it ever comes. There we go. And it's starting to get a little bit more robust with those storms. So this would give us a little bit more of a severe weather threat today. I kind of question whether or not we see that. It may be a more of a middle ground between the two. Do you think we have some storms coming our way this afternoon? I'm kind of questioning how much in coverage we'll end up having. There is a small severe threat with these, but honestly, we have the storm fuel for it, but we just don't have a lot of wind energy. Remember that to get severe storms, you have 3 ingredients that are pretty well necessary. You have to have some wind energy. We measure that in bulk shear. Roughly, you need greater than, say, 35 knots or so of bulk shear to do it. You can get by with a little bit less, but that's kind of a rough estimate. And then you need some fuel for those storms. That's what our CAPE product is, convective available potential energy. Just a measure of how much fuel that we have in the atmosphere for those storms to feed off of. Then you need some sort of a lifting mechanism. It could be a front, it could be a low pressure system, it could be what we call a short wave, which is just some upper level energy moving through. You get those and you can have the potential for severe weather. We've got the fuel today, but the wind energy is kind of what's a little bit lacking this afternoon. And so as a result of that, I'm kind of questioning how much of a severe threat we could get. We may get a rogue warning or 2 here for wind and maybe even some small hail, but I don't expect an outbreak by any means today. Tomorrow, I think, will be the bigger story. Let me switch back in time to a longer version of the RRFS model. And this will help us, this goes out longer in time, and it'll help us take into tomorrow. So here's this afternoon, and you see again, this particular run of the model is pretty robust. There's those storms blowing off from our west coming out towards us. So this is Friday morning, 6 a.m. Central Time. We see some potential rain and storms moving through here. Then as we get into the afternoon hours, we get a little bit of a break in this. Let me back this up, and you can see we kind of get a break in between those systems. And then as you go through the day, 6 o'clock Central Time, we've got some storms that have started to develop and move in. And this will be an environment that is a little bit more favorable for severe weather. So for that reason, even though we are under a marginal risk for severe weather on Friday, SPC has outlined a 2% tornado risk for southern Indiana, southern Illinois, and then parts of the northern portions of Kentucky here. And then the wind threat, here you go, and then the hail threat is out of our area. And then the day 3 risk is just a small risk for everything. They don't outline into the specifics only on day 1 and day 2. But we do have a small tornado risk for tomorrow, and we'll kind of talk about that. There's not going to be a massive threat. I don't think we're looking at a huge tornado outbreak with this tomorrow. No, we could get a sneaky threat in here again. So here's the way this looks. And again, by the time you get to base, say 6 o'clock tomorrow, you've got some storms that could be moving in here. And there could be some of these rotating. So you see these sort of shaded paths here with these storms. That's indicating rotation tracks potentially over the past hour in this run. And so you see that there are a few of those as you move in through here. So it's something that we'll have to watch. If we just put those rotation tracks on here for the whole model run, you see there's some individual cells out there that could have a little bit in there, which is why the tornado threat is not non-existent. It's a small risk, but it's there. This isn't massive amounts of rotation. Now, I will say this model is a little bit bullish on it. If you switch back to the HRRR model and look at the same thing, it's got some there, but it's a lot less. Again, maybe a blend between those is where we actually end up. I don't expect this to be a massive thing, but nonetheless there. Let's back up future radar on this model as well so that you can get some ideas. So here we are Friday morning, and you see this system of storms moving in. It wants to have it dying out a little bit more than what the RRFS model does. You get kind of a break move in here, and then the afternoon, evening hours come, and you get these storms starting to move in as well. And then as you go through the night, you start to clear out some a little bit, and then we'll have more storms come around for Saturday. Let me go back to this particular model, and let's take a look at some of the severe weather parameters so you can kind of see what I'm talking about here, about this threat not being completely non-existent. So here we'll go 5 p.m. tomorrow night, and we've got storms that have fired and started to move into the area. Again, remember, we need some wind energy, and we need some fuel for these storms. So let's look at CAPE. This is our fuel for the storms. Plenty of it there. Not just obscene amounts by any means, but nonetheless plenty of there. So then let's take a look at what wind energy we're going to get. Not a significant amount of wind energy here in the lower atmosphere, but as you go through the atmosphere, there's a little bit more. Not a whole lot though. You can see maybe 20, 30 knots worth of wind energy potentially here. It's not going to be anything significant. All right, folks, sorry about that. I had a little interruption there I had to deal with. So you get a little bit of wind energy coming in here. Again, it's kind of, 30, 35 knots of energy, maybe a little bit more over here. It's not a significant amount of energy, but as you go through the evening hours, you do get a little bit more of that energy rotating through. And then into the overnight hours, moving on, we'll start to see a little bit more of it eventually move into the area. This particular model doesn't show it as in the ways that some other does. So there is some disagreement with that. But regardless, not a significant amount of wind energy moving through here. Enough that we could get maybe some isolated severe storms out of this. Again, a sneaky threat here. If you take a look at, we've got the fuel, we've got that. If you take a look at, say, the energy and helicity index, this is looking at combining those two products in the lower ends of the atmosphere so that we can kind of put a potential tornado parameter with it. It's pretty minimal, but it's not non-existent. It is nonetheless a small amount in there. And I think that's why the 2% risk is indeed justified that the Storm Prediction Center has set up for us. So that's something that we'll watch out for. And if anything materializes, stay tuned, and I'll certainly do my best to cover that. Best way to find that is to go over to my Facebook page, Meteorologist Michael Wilhite, and then of course I post updates on here as well, and may do more videos as well, but that's primarily where I've been landing at for the time being. Now, a bigger threat through all this may end up be the rain. I didn't show the storms here coming in on Saturday. Video is getting kind of long, so I won't show that, but we've got more rain coming in, at least in a scattered nature, for Saturday as well. Wash, rinse, repeat. A low-end severe risk for that as well. But we'll get there as we get closer to time. The rain, excuse me, the rain may be the bigger threat here. We do have, this is today, we do have a slight risk of excessive rainfall moving in here as we get in time to tomorrow. That slight risk encompasses the entire area, and it lasts even into a marginal risk for excessive rainfall on Saturday. So it's going to rain for the next 3 days. We could get some significant rains out of this. If you take a look here, for example, at what the RRFS is putting out, you see a good 1 to even close to 4 inches or more of rain across the area. That's pretty bullish in it. The HRRR model shows some pretty significant amounts as well for some of us. Not as much for some of us. Again, maybe a mix between the two, but I suspect anywhere from 1 to 3, maybe even locally higher amounts worth of rain is what we could see out of this over the next 3 days or so worth of these storms. Any of the storms that do roll in are going to be potentially able to dump heavy amounts of precipitation. So there could be some flash flooding concerns with that. And it may be that that may end up being more of what our actual concern is rather than specifically a severe weather threat. But we do have that low-end tornado threat for tomorrow and something that bears worth watching. So wrapping it all up here, again, a low-end severe weather threat today, tomorrow, and on Saturday for us. It's not a significant threat, but it's nonetheless there today, tomorrow, and Saturday, marginal. Again, tomorrow, I think we could potentially be upgraded maybe to a slight risk. I think given the data for tomorrow being a little bit stronger, that's a real possibility, but we'll see. Regardless of what risk zone you are in, nature is just going to do whatever it wants to do. We sure saw that on Sunday with that sneaky tornado outbreak that we saw around here. It was not forecast to be that strong, and nature did what it wanted to do. That's just the way it does sometimes. So I'll be monitoring it, and as we get closer to time, we'll have more updates. Keep it tuned right here to my Facebook page especially, and I'll do more videos on this as much as I possibly can as well. And then we'll get through this. I'm meteorologist Michael Wilhite. Have a great day, folks.